Moving forward in our study today, I believe that we are looking at the second part of Exodus chapter 22 and then 23. And we have some certainly interesting stuff here. We're going to start at 22 verses 16 through 31. Exodus 22 verses 16 through 31. And this says, "In case a man entices a virgin who is not betrothed or engaged and lies with her, he shall pay her bride price as a wife for himself. If her father refuses to give her to him, he shall weigh out silver according to the bride price for virgins. You shall not let a witch or an enchantress live. Anyone lying with a beast shall be put to death. Indeed, death. Anyone sacrificing to any mighty ones other than Elohim is doomed. To him alone, Yahweh. As for the sojourner, you shall not tyrannize nor oppress him, for you came to be sojourners in the land of Egypt. Any widow or orphan you shall not humiliate. If you humiliate, indeed humiliate, in case he should cry to me, indeed cry out to me, I shall hear. Yes, I will hear his cry, and my anger will grow hot, and I will kill you with the sword, and your wives will become widows, and your sons will become orphans. If you obligate my people, the humble who are with you, with silver, you shall not be like a moneylender to him. You shall not impose interest on his loan. If you take as a pledge of being repaid back a cloak of your associate, prior to the sun going down, you well return it to him, for it is his only covering. It is his garment for his skin. In what is he going to sleep down? When it comes to be that he is crying to me, then I will hear, for I am gracious. You shall not speak ill of the Elohim, and a prince among your people you shall not curse. You shall not delay to offer from your fullness and your fruit juice. The firstborn of your sons shall you give to me. So shall you do with your bull and your flock and your donkey. 7 days it shall be with its mother. On the 8th day shall you give it to me. You shall come to be holy men for me. So you shall not eat the flesh of torn beasts in the field. You shall fling it to the dogs." Lots of interesting instructions here, which obviously on their surface seem fairly common and fairly simple. But as we have seen before, it definitely goes deeper than that. I want to start with this first one regarding a man enticing a betula, a virgin, a young maiden, who is not betrothed. Why would that make a difference whether this woman was betrothed or not?
Should be considered another man's wife or future wife.
You could have adultery involved.
Yeah, it'd be adultery
Yeah.
or fornication.
Yeah, so in this culture, it has become known to us that in the case of a betrothal or when you get engaged, they consider that to be binding, and that if you sleep with someone else when you're engaged to be married to someone, that's adultery, and you will be stoned to death. That you can look at, if you put this in your notes, Deuteronomy 22 talks about this same example and gives you a little bit more details. Now, I just have a question, and you might have to use your intellect, maybe the spirit within you, to try to answer this question. What is this woman's status if her father refuses to give her to this man? She's now no longer a virgin. What is her status now?
Widow?
No, the widow's dead.
Interesting idea. Interesting idea.
She is.
What's that?
Ruined is what she is.
And I think that is precisely why there is a payment being made here.
It looked like it took different kinds of payments, and I didn't understand.
Yes, it does seem to be that. The thing is that if the dad agrees, you can marry my wife, then he has to pay a certain sum of money, just like a dowry for a bride, to become, the husband, and he will take care of her, and there will be no shame brought to her. But there does seem to be a different price being paid here for the bride price for virgins. If her father refuses to give her to this guy, the payment seems to be higher, because not only has he shamed her, he has not become her husband, and now he has. I think that, and this is. I think this comes right on the heels of our instructions about thieves and about borrowing and lending and stuff like that. Because frankly, I think if you look at it like this, if you are enticing a young woman to sleep with you, and is that honorable?
No.
It's almost like theft. Now I know it might sound incredibly sexist to say this woman is naive and she just fell for it or whatever, but it does seem to indicate that.
It indicates that it is enticement and not rape.
Yes, that is
I
true.
wasn't sure. I couldn't find anything that.
Yeah, what's interesting is that the word enticement is literally the Hebrew word openness. Now you can see that translated in different ways. Deceit, maybe make it. When I think of that, some of the ways that Hebrew word is translated is maybe like making promises, making grand statements, making big ideas. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know exactly, but he's definitely done something that is not right, and he is required to pay, and it's almost like a theft. And the question again is if he decides to go ahead and pay the bride price for virgins because her dad says, you are not marrying my daughter, but you're going to pay me the bride price for virgins, he's brought shame on the family, and he's had to repay money to help mitigate that shame. But now we have a young lady who has been defiled and has brought shame to the family. They've been compensated, but that's something that she's going to have to live with. And what is her status now? I mean, does that mean that she cannot marry again? Keith?
No, she just has to find a man willing to overlook that.
Yeah, and that could be an issue.
Live with her dad forever.
Well, didn't Jacob's daughter Dinah kind of find herself in that same situation?
She absolutely did, yeah. Yes, she did.
Very much like that.
Well, yeah, that was he did get raped.
Yeah.
But yes, so it's a similar case, and it's interesting also in Deuteronomy 22 that the case that they're talking about is actually rape, when a woman is overcome in the field or in the city. So it's just unfortunate, really, that this woman now has a sullied reputation, and it's like somebody tricked her. And I know it sounds weird because it's like, does she not have a brain? But it's difficult. It kind of seems like it could be sexist or something. It's like they're easily trickable or something. Keith?
Well, it's not that. I mean, yes, it's easy to say that you're not in the passion of the moment with whoever's whispering in your ear, making promises to you and all these things. But then at the same time, how if they did it in secret, hiding it until they got married, or he must have rejected her further down the line because she didn't give herself willingly to him without the expectation that maybe she was going to marry him. They just keep this secret down the road that they would have their vows because maybe he promised her something, I'll marry you,
I would assume that promises were made because
Right.
otherwise she's gone a whoring is
Right.
the way the Torah would
And that's
describe
not-
it in
that's
other
not what's
places.
here, yeah.
Yeah, and that's not indicated
Somehow
here
it was
necessarily.
revealed that they had premarital sex, and then now the shame was brought forward.
Yeah, right,
But they hadn't even been betrothed because the bride price had not been paid.
right, right. This was done in
She
secret.
hadn't even waited for the betrothal.
Right. This is all done in secret, and it becomes revealed, and it's like, okay, now you have to make good on this.
You could look at this as her not being stupid too,
How so?
because all the responsibility for this action lies with him, and she may want a husband and be using this to ensnare him.
Leverage.
It doesn't have to be that she's stupid.
Oh, hey, look at you go, Tracy.
I'm just kind of reminded of, you know, since this version is not betrothed and is being seduced, it's
Mm-hmm.
reminding me of the garden with Eve being more seduced. And in 2 Corinthians 11, Paul's saying, I have betrothed you to be a chaste virgin to
The Messiah. Yeah.
and he paid the price for us. So he paid the price, the dowry or whatever. So he's doing the honorable thing. I'm just seeing like the opposite, I guess, of it.
Yeah, the right way to do it.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah, that makes sense. That's a good point. Excellent point. I think, Jerry, did you want to point
What
something
did
out?
I say? This wasn't a case of adultery because it didn't demand the death penalty, whatever
Right.
they did.
Right.
I
So,
think it was sex before marriage.
Yeah, and I think, and I didn't really want to just bring that out in the open, but how would you characterize what the Torah is teaching regarding premarital sex?
We had that argument before.
It's not the same
This
thing
is
as
one of the
fornication.
things.
Is that the same thing as fornication?
That's what I've been led to believe.
That's what we've all been led to believe, absolutely. I'm not saying it's not true. I'm just simply saying from this passage, what information can you gather? Clearly, the young woman, whether she was being sneaky and trying to hook this man in, or whether he was being sneaky and trying to hook her in, they had premarital sex. And what is the remedy? Excuse me?
That's for adultery.
Yeah, so is this adultery?
No.
No.
It's not adultery. There's money paid.
There's punishment.
Well, is it punishment to force the guy to marry her?
No.
Whoa.
Not exactly. Keith?
Well, okay, so
Well, it's a
Yeah.
shotgun wedding.
exactly, he went ahead and
Yeah.
he maybe there was interest, they liked each other, but then I could see two things. He made these promises to her. The dad didn't really know that this man was trying to court her on the side or whatever, and then he didn't finish what he had started, so she said, I'm telling my dad that you did.
Well, the
did with
father
me,
is
and now
definitely
bringing
the
it to
protector. I mean,
light, right? Bringing
yeah.
it to light because he didn't step forward to do the rightful thing and say, I want your daughter's hand in marriage. But at the same time, if you take and look at it from the big view of, because everybody knew the rule, right? And he wasn't cheating on anybody, but yes, he didn't go through the process of making it known that he wanted her hand in marriage and going through all the proper things without, what do you call it?
the proper channels.
Yeah, but not making the family look bad.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
her good name.
Right.
Well,
Sure.
now,
When you go over to Leviticus, I think it's in chapter 18 or 17, it's got that whole list of sexual sins
Right,
and the
right.
punishment for them.
Yes.
This is not listed in
No,
there.
it's not.
So,
That has to do with
This is
sleeping with
another
your
kind of-
cousin,
what
sleeping with
is
your
the-
sister, sleeping with an animal,
Right.
homosexuality. Yeah, so this is and this is not listed
It's not
there.
listed there, so it,
well, my point was now if he was goofing around, he's going to now be either forced to marry her and now take her and be responsible for her because he did,
Or pay your money.
or pay handsomely so the father now has that little bank of money to help. However long
Pay a
it's-
dowry for another man, perhaps.
I
Yeah.
think what this does is it gives some gravity to the whole idea of if you're going to get that intimate with each other, there's some things you need to consider. Whereas in today's society, it's like no consequences, no.
Funny.
Right.
But I think he realizes how that sort of intimacy, the father realizes how that sort of intimacy impacts, especially women.
Right.
And so he's like putting some red caution lights around that sort of interaction.
Before you defile the flower, think about it.
Yeah, but this is a serious thing.
Nice, Keith.
Which shows you he wanted it, and after he got it, he didn't want it, and he wanted to get rid of it.
He wanted the cow.
Flower to
He
flower.
wanted the milk. He didn't want the cow.
Yeah.
Yes,
Or the bee going from flower to flower.
that's right. That's right.
Hey,
Now, I think the Torah does speak about that. A bee going from flower to flower. That's whoring.
We thought this come under the lasciviousness.
Lascivious?
How would we pronounce that word?
Lasciviousness.
Lasciviousness.
It might come under that
Oh.
category.
Yeah, see, fornication, lasciviousness, I don't know that those are related here because fornication is something that's very interesting. It's a very peculiar word, and it doesn't... See, fornication, I don't know that there's actually a Hebrew word that relates to that. I think that comes from the New Testament and the Greek word porneia, where we get the word pornography. But I don't know that it's talking about pornography necessarily, but maybe sexual promiscuity, sleeping around with no intent to get engaged or married or whatever. You're just having a good time. I think that is probably the clearest definition of lasciviousness. Fornication, porneia, is just sex for the sake of sex and enjoyment, and there's no intentions of procreation, forming a family, doing the honorable thing. I think that is probably, and that would come with much more severe penalties than we love each other, there were promises made. I mean, that seems to be the case here, is that she was enticed. What's she enticed
doesn't
with?
necessarily follow that the fellow didn't want to marry her.
That's true.
It says the father refuses.
Yes, and if he's enticing, what is he enticing her with? Just the idea of the sexual pleasure, the feeling good? I don't know that would be enough, certainly not in those days. I mean,
Maybe they wanted to be betrothed and the dad didn't accept that because
Could
of
be.
a difference in social standing or whatever.
that's certainly possible. I think
And so they thought they could force the dad's hand.
that's certainly possible. In my own estimation, after looking at this passage, what comes to my mind is just what happens when a young man and a young woman get intimate with each other. It's sometimes they lose control of themselves and they end up having sex. Lots of promises are made and lots of lots of ideas floated around, and I'm going to marry you, and they're talking and they're becoming close and they're becoming emotionally connected, and then sex happens. And I think that this is God taking care of that issue because he knows the human heart and he knows what's going to happen. He says, well, this is not supposed to happen, let's have a remedy for it. This is my own personal interpretation. I could be totally wrong about that, but just wanted to throw that out there. Keith and then Tracy?
I was going to say they were Twitter pated, and that happens.
Twitter pated. That's a great word, Keith. Very good word, Keith. Tracy?
I was just looking at the word fornication in the Hebrew, and it is used.
It is, okay. What is that word?
It's called zana,
Zana, okay.
zayin nun hey, and it means to commit fornication, play the harlot. When you look at the pornea definition, it's pretty much the same.
Pretty much same, okay.
So it's about whoring,
Promiscuity.
playing the harlot.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Good, thank you. So I'm going to move forward just a little bit. Now, note this enchantress or a witch or something like that, a diviner. What is a sorcerer or an enchanter? What is this?
An enchanter I forgot what you call it.
Conjuring?
Conjures up spells and things.
What is a spell for?
Demonic
What are they? I mean, what is the purpose?
Someone else.
Control, power. How do those?
Deception.
Yeah, nothing good. But what I mean that why? I mean, I know that you guys have probably heard a lot about occultism and people, contacting dead spirits through, mediums or Ouija boards or
Wizards.
what wizards or whatever, witches, Wiccans, these New Age kind of Wiccan stuff. What is the whole point of what those people are trying to do? And you've already mentioned several of them.
Information.
They want information that other people don't have. Why would you want that?
To best your enemy.
To best your enemy, to aggrandize yourself, to have some unfair advantage. Is the occult real? I think we all can agree that there are demonic forces, and you can indeed get involved in it and get sucked into it. And you know what? Would that give you an unfair advantage?
In some areas, yes.
In some areas it might be. Why would the Father have a problem with this?
Because it's like another God. He wants you to worship him, seek him for information. Not that's what happened to Saul.
Indeed.
Didn't want to hear what God had to say. He wanted an answer right now, so he consulted.
He didn't like the answer that God gave him. Tracy?
They create signs and wonders and act as God, and it's the same word for the sorcerers, arrow sorcerers.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that's who these
absolutely.
people are.
So there's, yeah,
I think also money, because many times you, as a person, you seek a sorcerer. And there is another story, I don't know where it is in the New Testament somewhere, but I think in Acts, there was a sorcerer there as well.
Simon Magnus.
Simon the Sorcerer.
Yeah, that might be, yeah. And they just make a lot of money out of that. So it's a way of living, and I think that per se is also
Yes.
bad.
Yeah, there was that girl who had a spirit of divination, and her owners of this slave girl were making money off of her. And Paul cast out the demon, and she wasn't able to perform her tricks anymore, and they lost a bunch of money, and they threw him out of town and beat him. So yeah, that's a money maker, Mike.
So, with the Torah and the way the laws work, it's for his people that are subscribing to this belief in him and trying to follow in his way. So when it says that they are not to let one live, is this one that's among them, or anyone that they go into a land and they see a sorcerer and they're supposed to kill him?
That's an excellent question, and according to like Josephus and Philo, they were to this actually. They interpreted this to say that you shall not let them live, meaning not necessarily you should kill them, but that you should not let them remain among you. And now I don't know whether that's a valid interpretation or not, but it does seem to me that they're saying you will not let one of these people live, as though you will kill them. But it doesn't say it like it does in all these other places where it's like you shall surely stone them, or they shall die. It's like it's worded it a different way, and that's why there was some confusion about that. It's a good question. I suppose it could be they could be driven out or killed. Maybe that's left open for different possibilities. I don't really know. Derek?
I was kind of asking that question to build on that, but I'm starting to get stumped by that one question.
Well,
I was gonna
throw it
ask,
out there and we'll chop that stump down.
I mean, just with I don't like that's a very interesting question, and I was wondering if there's anywhere in the context, because the most I can think of, like in the New Testament and other areas of the commandments, is usually cast the person out from among your midst. And I'm
Do
wondering-
what?
Casting out the person from among your midst.
Oh, right.
And so I'm wondering if that is attached to this context here too. I don't remember.
Well, if you drove them out and you weren't funding their operation, that would kind of result in them not living eventually. It's not like you're taking action directly to cause their death, but you're removing all support and resources from them so that.
That's true, and this is if you want to take it in relation to when you go into the land that the Lord your God is giving you, and you find one of these people doing this in your midst, and you kick them out. Well, they could go to another nation and make their money and work their magic there and try to make a living, but you shall not suffer this person to live among you. I think you could possibly interpret that way, but you could also interpret it as if one of your own people is engaged in this. It certainly does seem to give license for the death penalty in this
But they
case.
used to kill them all the time.
What's
Different
the
kings
difference
would take over and
between-
they would destroy all the witchcraft.
That's
when
true.
Saul was king, and he consulted me, he had to search a lot of places for a witch,
Because he had driven them all out. Yeah, that's true.
but they killed them.
Yeah.
They literally killed them.
Yeah.
They didn't just drive them out.
Well, we have a long history of killing witches. It's been happening for a long time.
Sometimes they
Well,
Even here in
In
America.
England, actually, yeah.
England, America. Did they do that in the Netherlands?
Oh yeah, also. Yeah.
Burn them at the
Same thing, because we had Catholics on the north, Protestants on the south. Yeah,
And
they were
witches-
also
and
very,
witches in
very
the
nice
middle?
people. Yeah.
And witches in the middle.
Most of the witches were the real Christians.
Yeah.
I was
So
gonna say, sometimes it was just an ethnic cleansing type thing in the name of witches.
there has been a lot of killing witches not in a righteous fashion. I think you can definitely see in history books.
Does it make any difference when I go over to that number for Strong's,
Yes.
and it gives the word for live, to
Mhm.
live?
Mhm.
It says a prime root, to live, whether literally or figuratively, causatively, to revive or keep or make or leave alive.
Well, you would have to attach the lo in there. You will not. They will not live. But I don't know. That's a good question about how that is phrased. I'm going to move forward just a little bit. Note in the next sections Yovah's attitude towards foreigners, widows, orphans, and the poor. How would you say that this attitude that Yovah has towards the downtrodden is exemplified in the New Testament and especially in the Messiah Yeshua? Do we have Yeshua talking about the poor and widows and orphans? What are just what are some of the things that he has said, and how would they tie in here?
Take care of them.
Take care of them. Do you have any examples of him interacting with any of them?
Probably, we could think.
Jerry?
Well, I think it's in Matthew 7 and 9. When he talks about if you give somebody a cup of water in my name, he's talking about that group of people when the millions are going to go to hell. And they said, Lord, but we did all this stuff for you. So you didn't do nothing for me. And then this other group, well, Lord, they said, when did we do something for you? When you gave somebody a cup of water
Right,
in my name.
right.
Enter into the joy of the Lord.
Yeah, yeah.
So-
Interesting. There are so many also psalms that deal with God being tremendously gracious to widows and orphans and the poor. What is the significance of a widow and an orphan in this society, or even in our society? Well, I mean, what is the significance of what particular predicament, trouble do they find themselves in that the rest of us don't?
They're missing a protector.
They're missing a protector. Yes, that's an excellent way to put it.
I think he steps
If you
in
don't
as
have
their
any money.
Yeah. I'm sorry, what was that, Angela?
I said, I think he steps in as their protector. He's letting you know.
I'm watching
Sometimes he
out
uses
for him.
us to do it.
Yeah, he expects us to do it. I think that he's saying, I expect you that you will take care of people who don't have any protection. Whether it's the poor who can't get justice because they can't afford to hire a lawyer or something like that, or whether it's the poor because they don't have enough food for their mouths or clothing for their bodies, or whether it's a widow whose husband has died and who is no longer able to provide for herself, or an orphan who does not now have a father and a mother to raise them up in the way that they should go and provide for their needs. He lays that responsibility on us 100% and basically says, if you don't, I will take up their cause, and I'm going to hold you responsible for not taking up their cause. That's a very serious thing, and he spends a good amount of time throughout the whole Torah and prophets, the writings, the Psalms, all the way up into the New Testament. The downtrodden and the humble, he has a soft spot in his heart for these people. And it is very... the book of James talks about this as well. When he says, If a rich man comes into your assembly and you give him a special seat and say, you sit here, and then to the poor man you say, hey, sit on the ground or sit by my footstool, have you not made distinctions among yourselves and become judges with evil motives? What would the evil motives be?
Be seen.
To be seen with somebody who...
To find favor with someone who can give you something back.
Yes, to find favor with somebody who can give you something back. If you're paying special attention to people who are famous or somebody who has money, what are you expecting? To benefit from it somehow, whether it's through their connections or maybe their money itself directly, or being associated with them would somehow rub off on you and make you look better than you are. You feel like you are, or something like that. So, making those type of judgments is very much in our nature, and we have to be warned against it constantly. And I know that, certain Christian ministries have spent a lot of time working on the poor and homeless people, and that's a real dedicated thing to do. It's very difficult. I know that many of us can fall into this trap of just not wanting to put ourselves in a situation that makes us uncomfortable like that, and having to deal with people like that. And we can also become very judgmental in our own minds, thinking, and I know I have been guilty of this, and you probably have too if you think about it. You think about a person who is homeless or a person who is poor, and you know what our tendency is to say, they did it to themselves. They made poor choices. They got involved with drugs, they got involved with alcohol, they got involved with something that ruined their lives. They did it to themselves. Nothing just happens on its own, especially here in America. It's like, you got every opportunity in the world. You're poor because you want to be poor. You're poor because you made bad choices. I have no sympathy for you.
But if you do help people because you feel that they need it, helping you, and then you see them at McDonald's, you see them, in the grocery store getting all kinds of junk food and stuff.
Or you give you give a homeless guy some money and you see him walk into a liquor store and buy some alcohol.
Yeah.
Is that legitimate?
I'm talking about a situation we've been in. And they come and ask after we helped them the first time, they would come back and ask for more. And we went to our pastor and asked him, what do? We don't want the kids to go hungry, but at the same time, we're taking from our budget to give to them and stuff like that. And our pastor advised us to back off.
I would say in that situation, what I would do is, because I would feel for the person in need or the children or whatever, so I personally would go physically buy the food for them and then give it to them.
Well, that may be why I did that out here in Arizona.
Yeah.
For a lady. I took her and bought stuff.
Yeah, and I've done that for homeless people as well, rather than give them money, maybe give them food, or other people maybe a gift card to Fry's. It's up to them to be responsible. I feel like I do my end of it, but if I saw that's a
good point.
Pay their utilities,
do your part,
rather than give them the money.
Let them be responsible for their part. I just it's difficult for us to clear our thinking in regards to this, because we can become hard of heart. We really can, really easily.
That's why it's good to be sensitive to the Spirit, because the Spirit and can show you, to give money or whatever. And you move as the Spirit tells you to move. Maybe sometimes emotionally we're too emotional, just want to give without waiting to see. But if the Lord tells you to do it, regardless of the circumstances, you're obeying what He says, regardless of how they spend it.
Yeah. Well, I think we just be mindful that God is watching these people.
You're supposed to be a good steward with your own money too.
That's definitely true. Yeah.
Because it makes me feel good, because I enjoy giving.
Yeah. Right.
Which isn't bad, but there has to be, like she said, the Holy Spirit just showing us. But
yeah.
When people come right and ask you for it, it kind of puts you on the spot, and you wonder, how do you do this in love?
It would be nice if we were a little more perceptive and a little more sensitive to the needs of others, and we offered instead of having to be asked, and sharing that, sparing them the shame, humiliation of having to ask for help in that way.
Yeah.
That would be nice if we could get to that position, because that's a very humbling experience to have to come to somebody and say, I need help, and it's money.
No, there wasn't any humbleness.
Oh well, that's unfortunate.
Common Falls.
No.
Yeah.
No, it was like,
Um,
guys, that was-
Now, I want to look at verse 28 here, where it talks about speaking ill of the Elohim. And now, of course, we've mentioned this before, and then that word is, like judges or magistrates. And when it's capitalized, it means the magistrate, the Most High. Now, here it says Elohim. Is this referring to the magistrates? Could this possibly be referring to foreign gods? To Elohim himself? How would you interpret that? You shall not speak ill of the Elohim.
Probably all three.
Probably all three? Okay, well, let's take the first one, magistrates. Is there rules regarding not speaking ill of the judges or the rulers? You ever hear anything about that?
Only Paul.
Yes, that happened to Paul. Let's look at that. If you flip over to the book of Acts for just a second. Look at Acts chapter 23. If you look at Acts chapter 23, starting right at the beginning, Paul was in front of the Sanhedrin, who was questioning him about what is all this trouble you're causing? He looked to the Sanhedrin, and Paul said, "Men, brothers, I, in all good conscience, have conducted myself toward Jehovah this day." But Ananias, the high priest, ordered those standing by him to strike him on the mouth. But then Paul said to him, "Elohim is hereafter going to smite you, you whitewashed wall. For you sit judging me agreeably to the Torah, while you transgress the Torah, and you command to strike me?" And those standing by said to him, "Do you revile the high priest of Elohim?" And Paul said, "Brothers, I did not know that he was high priest. For it has been written, you shall not speak evil of a ruler of your people." And Paul is quoting this passage right here. So yes, it is definitely, and there's also, if I remember correctly, my mind has not got this nailed down exactly, but it talks about when the judges make a ruling in regards to, a disagreement between parties, that you will follow that, and you will not argue with the judges, or you will be penalized even more. There definitely does have some hierarchical authority given here, and that we are supposed to treat our judges with respect. I know that in the day and age that we live in, where the judges are seemingly corrupt, and it's very difficult for us to do that.
Some are gay.
That is true.
That's an inside joke.
That is an inside joke. Yes, it is. So that definitely is talking about, according to Paul's own interpretation of this passage, talking about speaking ill of one of the rulers of your people. Now, we in Western society have almost zero respect for authority. We don't recognize authority. We've set up our churches where there is no authority, and it's not turned out terribly awesome. We don't want to give authority to anyone. This whole country that we're living in here was founded on rebellion. Granted, we had some reasons for wanting to fight, but we're a bunch of rebellious little cusses, and we don't want people telling us what to do, and we revile authority all the time. And I don't think that's a good place to be. But you know what? It's becoming more and more difficult to find someone that would be a righteous judge, or a person of wisdom, or a righteous ruler that you would even want to place yourself under.
How could Paul not
He was on
He
relationships.
wasn't a legal high priest anyways.
That's true. That's true. And I don't. That is kind of weird that Paul wouldn't have known that, especially being intimately associated with. I don't know. That's a good question, though, Keith.
There's another scripture, I don't know off the top of my head, but I think it's Paul that says something about, listen to the government and do what the government tells you. Is that Romans?
Yes. Yeah.
I sort of had a problem with that. Like, really? Because the same government was oppressing the Jews and doing all these things. Yeah, he was saying that.
Yeah.
So.
Now, I know that some have interpreted that passage to be not talking about civil government, but religious government. The elders, the deacons, the teachers, the pastors, the prophets, the Sanhedrin even, and that he's not talking about civil government. But I think it's certainly legitimate to say follow the civil government because rules are put in place to punish evildoers and to give praise to those who do right. So are there laws in the United States where they are trying to force you to do something that would violate what Yuvah has said to do? Are there? Can you think of one? Any?
More and more all the time.
Well, tell anyone.
Look at
Well,
some-
no, wait a minute. The law says that you may abort a child. It doesn't say you must.
They're forcing all of us to have dirty hands for it by using our taxes to pay for it.
That's tangential, and I understand the point that you're making,
Most
but
recently is this,
What was it, early
this
bathroom
guy,
in North
yeah.
Carolina?
okay, now you're not forced to use the bathroom. But what I'm saying is, I want to
You're
just
forced
make
to
this.
allow it if it's your store.
Well, okay, yes, that is true. That is true. Let's say that you own a cake shop and some homosexual couple wants a cake, and you're gonna be punished for doing what you believe is right. And you know what? Let me just say this. Does a sinner have a right to purchase a cake?
Oh, yeah,
Does that infringe upon your religious liberty?
not really.
If you know that you're taking part in a godless ceremony by doing it.
Yeah. Okay.
The thing that you have to remember is that, especially as time goes on and it's gonna get worse, is that it's not so much of I have to yield to them even if they're asking me to disobey God, but I live here and it may have consequences, but I still have to obey God rather than man.
Yeah.
And accept the civil consequences.
Sure. And I would say that, yes, there are starting to be some laws of the land where if you don't comport with those laws, you could be punished. But that's pretty rare, and most of the laws that are put in place are indeed righteous laws. Many of them are stupid and I don't agree with necessarily, but we're not being forced to, like in the book of Daniel, when you hear the sound of the harp and the lyre, you must bow down to this statue. It hasn't reached that place yet, but I would say you really want to think about the purpose of these things being put into place and that all these laws being laid down is for a righteous society. And in spite of the fact that there are unrighteous judges and a bunch of wackadoos and bad stuff happening in America, most of the laws are for the protection of yourself and other people. And I can certainly abide by those laws, and I have no problem with that. And frankly, let's say for the sake of discussion, I produce videos, right? And I do wedding videos. What if I was approached by a homosexual couple to film a gay wedding?
That's between you and the Lord.
It is.
It's your
But how many gay florists have straight people hired as well and have had beautiful weddings? I say it goes both ways. I do.
Yeah.
I just say you're human. I don't need to know the nature of who you're sleeping with to do something for you.
Yeah.
I've been approached to take pictures of a birth for
A gay couple.
a gay couple.
Mm-hmm.
It's surrogate mom, and the baby's going to two gay men.
Mm-hmm.
See, I think that's a fine line too, because if we're to be protecting orphans and widows, and now we're supporting a union between a homosexual couple that now is going to influence this orphan, where's the line that we draw?
That's a tough one. That's a tough one. And I actually was approached to perform a wedding filming for a gay couple, and I said no. And I later thought about that and thought, I really wonder if that was the right answer to give. I don't know. It's a really difficult situation. I mean, if they know that you are a person who follows the Bible, what are they expecting you to do?
They're looking
Well, they could be looking for trouble, or what do they expect? Once they, let's just say that they walk into your shop and you're just talking and they see that you're wearing a cross or you've got a little scripture pasted on the wall. What do they instantly believe that's going to happen? Rejection.
Because God
What if
doesn't
you
pick 'em out.
what if you don't? What if you didn't
Pick 'em
reject
out.
them? What if you treated them with love and kindness and respect and you fulfilled their order? Which provides a better testimony about love?
Well, just like Jesus did when he was with sinners. I don't remember him
He
condemning
did.
any of them.
He did, and he was condemned for hanging out with sinners. And you know what he said: "The sick need the physician, not the righteous. I didn't come to save the righteous. I came to save the sinners." Now, did all those sinners that he was eating with repent before they went into the house?
No.
It doesn't say so. I'm
He
not
loved the
making
sinner,
I'm not
not
making
loved the sinner.
judgment for you, and I'm not saying and to a certain extent you wouldn't want to get involved. I mean, for me personally, I wouldn't want to get involved necessarily too deep, but I don't know about just providing a good or a service and being rejection, providing rejection to people. I just don't know if that's the right way to look at it. But that's a really personal decision, and I'll brook no arguments from you.
You still promote it, especially what we do, photography and video. If you make the video, that video will be online. So now you're promoting, gay is normal, gay marriage is normal.
Yes.
So
now
it's
I would.
that gray
That is
area.
a very
I
gray
feel the
area.
same
Now,
thing,
would
but
I provide the product to them and allow them to have it and use it however they want to?
They will.
Maybe I would.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Would I then promote that as, hey, this is something that I've done, and hey, I wouldn't do that
No.
necessarily. Keith,
No, but they would.
they
Go
would.
to Alan. He shoots great gay weddings.
That-
Okay, no, but that's not
Yes,
where I really
there-
wanted to go with that. But you could see that. You could,
Yes, I
you could
could.
gain a new clientele off of that.
Yes.
Because if they're being rejected by others, but now, I don't think it's that big of a deal. I think there's always going to be somebody that will do that for anybody. If we're trying to make different social groups. But in the one thing that Grace was saying, so now I've got a business, you offer a service, and someone comes in and you don't want to provide them service, and the government says, smacks your hand. You just say, I'm moving to a different place. I'm taking my business out of here. It'd be tough, but yes, you have that. Just like Alan said, you have the decision to make. Do you listen to the government, or do you just up and move so no one forces you to do what you don't want to do? And then there was that lady in South Carolina, whenever she was a magistrate, and all of a sudden they said, you have to issue gay marriage licenses.
Oh, yeah.
And she said, no, it's not on the books. And all of a sudden you changed the law because the feds made the rule.
But apparently, in
And-
her situation, when that rule changed, she talked to her supervisors or whoever was in charge of her having the job and said, I cannot do this.
Right.
And they said, don't worry about it. If it comes up, have one of your coworkers take care of that.
Okay.
And then the gay couple would not accept that.
Right.
That's my understanding.
And well, she stopped issuing licenses and said, I'm not issuing them. And she had enough power to, close it down for weeks and not issuing. It got escalated, and then everybody complained. So, yes, does she need to find a new job? If they're going to keep pressuring her, and that's her government job, she needs to find a new job, because you're not going to overcome that obstacle by yourself.
Tracy?
I'm just reminded of Ephesians 5, talking about children's disobedience and saying to have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather reprove them, for it is a shame to even speak of those things which are done of them in secret. And I think, like you said, I can still love my homosexual friends, and if there's something I can do to show them love, fine, but if it came to me, down to me putting something that supports their sin on a cake and giving it to them, I wouldn't do that. But if they ask for a cake, sure, I'll give you a cake. Does that make sense?
It does, yes, and I can just see that it's challenging. You know, I mean, do you have homosexual friends? I do as well, and you know, if they wanted you to go to their wedding, would you do it?
I probably wouldn't.
That's
No,
a very
I had a
difficult
homosexual
thing.
tutor when
What?
I was in college.
Oh,
When
yeah.
I was in community college. And he was younger and I was older because I was 50 when I went to the school.
Sure.
But he was shocked that I would accept him as a tutor. And we had already had conversations. They knew I was a Christian. There wasn't a doubt. I had a couple of instructions that I had a hard time with that. But, and he just said to me, he said, "You do know that I don't believe the way you do." And I said, and he said it several different ways. And I said, "You mean because you're homosexual?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "That is sin, according to God's word. I'm a sinner, you're a sinner. I've accepted Christ, and I've accepted the fact that I'm a sinner. The only way I can go to heaven is through Jesus Christ and his blood shed on the cross." And he said, "I know, I heard you talking the other day." And I knew he had. And I said, "The only difference is you haven't been convicted and convinced that you're a sinner and need a holy God." So I said, "We have a difference of opinion." I said, "I'm not asking you to teach me how to do your lifestyle. I need to learn how to do this math," you know. So, but
valid point.
I got quite a few chances to witness to him because of that. So I think that it makes a difference in what it is they're asking us to do and all that, because I've had several friends who are homosexual. We didn't get buddy-buddy, but we were definitely civil to each other.
Yes.
And you should be.
And I think that's I feel like that's the right thing to do. Because and I think that's you could tie that in with what Paul was saying in Ephesians. It's like have no fellowship. Well, fellowship implies something a little deeper than just
Yes.
providing service at
This
the
is
counter.
fellowship.
This is fellowship. Inviting someone into your home and forming a relationship. Okay, so no, I wouldn't necessarily want to foster a relationship with what the Bible would consider to be a wicked person. I wouldn't want to foster that type of a loving and close, intimate relationship, a deep friendship. That would not be something that I would want to foster. But if I am asked to provide a service, a kindness, to show some act of love, I feel like it's incumbent upon me to do that.
Right, if they're hungry.
If they're hungry, I'm going to feed them. If they.
I mean, if you know it and they go to a restaurant, because you're waiting on them and serving them, you're not partaking in their sin.
Right.
I mean,
So,
come on.
that's a very, very personal thing that I think that each of us needs to be convinced of in our own hearts regarding the Spirit. And I don't want to spend too much time on it. I'll give Jerry the last
I
word.
just got one question.
Only one.
From God's point of view, what's the difference between a homosexual and two unmarried people living together?
Or a
Intimately.
person
What's the
who,
difference?
or a person who
I mean,
looks
it's
at pornography
all sex
on the
outside of
internet or
marriage.
whatever.
I mean, would you?
Well, I know. See, it's real easy. It's real easy for us to say, "Your sin is not my sin,"
Yeah, I mean,
and,
it's,
but that's very, very easy to do.
Well, that's true. I mean, sin is
I
sin.
never have quite.
That is true.
It is a double.
That's an excellent point, Jerry, and I can't gainsay that.
These two have been living together 20 years. We'll take the picture of the wilderness.
Does the sin of homosexuality come with an instant hell death penalty, but the sin of something that we do not have the same penalty?
Every sinner can repent.
Yeah, I agree. That's an excellent point.
By saying,
We had
Start turning away all the sinners
before
from
we had
business.
these.
Exactly. Yeah, and you're not showing service and love, but hey, that's a challenge, guys.
In the home,
That's a challenge.
Christian home is anybody else. But the gay, they don't let them come in.
I'm going to move forward.
Seriously, I mean, I
They've
just
changed
don't,
their stance
I
on that
don't get
too,
it.
Jerry.
I want you to take a look at if you have your Hebrew Bible that has, or you look up in your Strong's Concordance or something, look at verse 29. No, yes, 29, excuse me.
In your fruit juice?
Yes, I want to look at this fruit juice thing.
Juices. I have just juices.
Your juices.
Did
Yes.
I got like fruit and what and liquor.
Liquor, yeah.
Fruit and liquors. Yes, excellent, excellent.
A tear.
A tear. That's an interesting one.
Dema, right? Is that the one?
Yes, right. So how would you look at this? You shall not delay to offer your fullness and your fruit juice.
Fruit juice.
I mean, this one chose to translate it that
I
way.
thought we weren't talking about fruits anymore.
Yeah.
It's related to tears in the eye. The root word also is weeping. But if
Yes.
you look at the Hebrew letters, door to the water, eye, eyes.
Uh-huh,
The
uh-huh.
door
For which?
releases
For
the
the
water.
right, for the,
Both, they're both the same letters. So Dema that we're looking at is, it says tear or juice. You look at the root word, it says weeping. So it's the same letters, talking about the door of the waters of the eye.
Yeah.
you guys.
And I just wanted to, because I know that most of our translations say something about either liquor or wine or fruit juice and fullness. What do you, if you were to look below the surface like you just did at these Hebrew words, and you would say, do not delay to offer your fullness and your, let's just say it's your fullness. If you look at that word fullness, what did you think of that one? That is Malaya.
Malaya.
Malaya. Abundance. Produce. I just have I had fullness. Think about this. What if you were to interpret this in this way? Do not delay to offer the fullness of your heart in joy and your weeping from sadness. Would that work?
Does that mean share your love and share your compassion and cry with others?
I'm throwing that out as a possibility of an alternate translation. Do not delay to come to me with your fullness of your joy and the sadness of your sorrows.
In other words,
Does that change the meaning? And if it does, in what way and what does this demonstrate about our God?
He's great.
He wants you to come to him
Your
with all
emotions.
things,
Yeah, everything.
with your emotions.
The
If you're happy, and we have other sections in the Torah and the prophets and the writing that says, weep with those who weep and, rejoice with those who rejoice. Messiah said it himself. And I think that might be, I'm not saying definitively, but I think that might be a little bit better translation. I like it. Let's just put it that way. I like it.
Interesting that just before the sentence, wait, there is a clear, but the firstborn of son shall be given. So then it goes on, what you shall give.
Right.
Just that sentence before that, it'd be firstborn and flock, donkey.
Yeah. Yeah. Donkey. That's a good one. So I liked the idea when I was looking at the alternate translations about that maybe this has to do with taking your gladness of heart and your sorrow of heart to the Lord, because He wants to hear from you and He's keenly interested in whether you're having a great time or a bad time. He's there for you. I just liked the idea. I think that's where we'll stop for today, is to just finish up Exodus chapter 22. I know we only did one slide, but it was a full slide. It had fullness. So, and there's a lot there, and I'm glad we were able to cover it. Let us pray.